Powered by the Montana Television Network. This is the 530 News on Q2, Montana's news leader.
Good evening and thanks for joining us. I'm Russ Riesinger. Janelle's on assignment tonight. President Trump addressing the nation this afternoon over coronavirus concerns.
We have the best prepared people, the best people in the world. Congress is willing to give us much more than we're even asking for. That's nice for a change. But we are totally ready, willing, and able. It's a term that we use. It's ready, willing, and able. We have. It's going to be very well under control. Now, it may get bigger, it may get a little bigger, it may not get bigger at all. We'll see what happens.
The president addressing some of the criticism that his administration hasn't moved quickly enough, saying the risk of the virus to the public remains very low, much lower than dying from the flu. He also said steps are being taken to stop the virus from spreading here and also rapidly develop a vaccine. He's appointing Vice President Mike Pence to coordinate those efforts. Still, health officials say that communities should be prepared for a possible outbreak of the virus, which is likely to happen. We talk with Riverstone Health and Q2's Jenny Fick standing by now with more on the response here in our area. Jenny?
That's right, Russ. National and local experts say it's inevitable. The coronavirus will strike here, and our local teams are already arming up.
Local health providers gathered Friday to institute something called the Unified Health Command.
Response is being directed by Riverstone Health, Billings Clinic, St. Vincent Healthcare, and Yellowstone County Disaster and Emergency Services. We have a structure that's in place to do that.
The combined response for all of these groups is centered around preparation.
CDC's sort of prediction of if it's not a matter of if, but when coronavirus Wuhan arrives in our country, systems in place for if a person comes into Yellowstone County from China who needs to be monitored. We have systems in place should someone become symptomatic while being monitored. We're currently working on looking at issues like what's our inventory of gloves and masks.
Many of those materials come out of China, causing concerns for supply.
What is our community supply of those materials, not just what each one of us has?
Currently, there are no cases in Montana. The earlier scare in Gallatin County was proven negative by the CDC. The symptoms of other seasonal illnesses are similar to the coronavirus, meaning that although those in quarantine may become symptomatic, it does not mean that those symptoms are coronavirus.
More than 96% of all the Americans who have been monitored, who developed symptoms and were tested, over 96% do not have the Wuhan coronavirus.
Belton also says it is important to pick reliable sources to reduce misinformation.
We, as a community, work through our preparedness work. We are in constant contact with the CDC and the Montana Department of Public Health and Human Services.
He says don't panic, but be vigilant. Bottom line, it is never a bad idea to be prepared.
Our bigger concern right now, quite frankly, is influenza. There are many more cases of influenza. There have been a number of people, thousands of people who have died in the United States this year from influenza. Much more present and prevalent right now. But the hygiene considerations are the same. Cover your cough, wash your hands, stay home if you're sick. And that's really what we want people to do for infectious disease in general. And I think those are sort of fundamental public.
In Billings, Jenny Fick, MTN News.
And as always, Riverstone Health reports the latest CDC news on the front page of their website. Back to you, Russ.
All right, thank you, Jenny. Well, one of the two men accused in the gruesome decapitation case of another man in Billings has been sentenced to prison. Jeffrey Haverty was sentenced to 70 years behind bars today, with 20 years suspended for the murder of Myron Knight in November of 2017, who was found beheaded and wrapped in a carpet in West Billings. As part of a deal with prosecutors, Haverty has agreed to testify against the other defendant in the case, Donald Cherry. Now, those two men were accused of killing Knight after they met him at a Billings casino and then attempted to rob him at his campsite. Montana seems to be making some progress in suicide prevention. For the first time, our state is not in the top 3 in the nation. That's according to new numbers from the American Association of Suicidology. In 2017, Montana had the highest suicide rate in the nation, but we're now 4th with a suicide rate of 24.9%. New Mexico was first in the U.S. with a rate of 25.6%, and Wyoming was second at 25.4%. While Montana saw some improvement, the report states the U.S. had its highest suicide rate since 1938 at nearly 15%. NAMI Montana Director Matt Kuntz credits organizations rallying together for suicide prevention as a main reason for the improvement, but says there's still a lot of work left to do.
but it is just a first step. You know, we're still losing too many people every day, and we just need to keep fighting.
And if you or someone you know is having suicidal thoughts, you're encouraged to call the Suicide Prevention Line. That number is 1-800-273-8255. Well, Yellowstone County Commissioners have decided to demolish the Metro Park Grandstand. With that comes an opportunity to build and add to the Metro Park grounds. Q2's David J. has more from a meeting this afternoon. David?
Well, Russ, commissioners see this as a chance to make some changes on the land between the grandstand and the Yellowstone River. Charlie Smith led a discussion today about a potential master plan without the grandstand. Smith helped with the idea for the Montana Pavilion and the Expo Center years ago. His ideas now include expanding the Expo Center, replacing the grandstand, and an equestrian complex. Commissioners invited Smith to help with the possible design.
We kind of threw it at him too. By the way, now you can if you take the grandstands out of it, what are the potential opportunities there as well? And that's where he started going, well, if the grandstands aren't there, then you can totally change this entire campus. You almost open up really almost 100 acres of flat land that are whatever you want it to be.
And Dennis Pittman says commissioners will decide whether or not to go ahead with a master plan and what that will involve. They will also soon start requesting bids for the grandstand demolition. Russ?
All right, thank you, David. Chief Forecaster Bob McGuire joining us now. Bob, a chance of a little rain or snow coming our way this evening.
A little minor, what we call a shortwave weather disturbance moving in. We can see it on the Doppler radar right now. Take a look at this. You can see it just started to make its way into north central and west central Montana from Missoula through Great Falls all the way to our Tavern. And you notice where the jet stream is? Right in the middle of it. So guess what? It looks like that's going to take that thing right on into the Billings area tonight. So here's what our high resolution forecast model shows. By 6 o'clock tonight, this stuff will be getting close to us. But I think it really won't be until about maybe 8:30 or 9 o'clock when the stuff starts making its way into Yellowstone County. And we're just going to catch a glancing blow out of this. We're not expecting very much out of it. And then by the time Thursday gets here, the whole thing washes out of here and looking at mostly sunny skies. On Friday, virtually the same story, mostly sunny skies, not much in the way of precipitation coming our way. Snowfall amounts for the Billings area expected to be very light. If anything, maybe just a dusting. Let's go back to Russ.
All right, thank you, Bob. Well, the Interior Department decides it is ready to start processing coal leases on federal land again. That announcement was made today after an environmental assessment concluded there's no significant environmental impact from coal. The move overturns the Obama administration's moratorium on coal leasing as part of its climate change strategy. The move drew mixed reaction. Senator Steve Daines said it's a great news for the future development of coal in Montana. Opponents, including Center for Western Priorities, say the environment review was flawed and that public land should be used for climate change solutions, not more mining. The Montana Supreme Court heard arguments today in a long-running lawsuit over small solar energy projects in the state. MTN's Jonathan Ambarian takes a closer look at the issues.
On Wednesday morning, Montana Supreme Court justices held oral arguments in a case that could determine the funding available to small solar projects in the state. In 2017, the Montana Public Service Commission cut the rates at which small, independent solar projects can sell their power to Northwestern Energy. They also limited contracts to 15 years in length instead of 25 years. Renewable energy advocates and a solar power developer sued over the decision, saying it undercut laws intended to encourage these projects. A district court judge ruled in their favor. The PSC and Northwestern appealed the decision to the Supreme Court. They argue if the utility pays more for power from solar developers, their customers will be overcharged. They said the reduced contract length was better for ratepayers, but still enough to allow development.
We concluded that a 15-year term was sufficient to balance the Commission's responsibility to enhance the economic feasibility of qualifying facilities under the standard rate tariff.
But solar advocates say the PSC didn't take into account some factors that would have increased the value of solar power. They said the combination of lower rates and shorter contracts would make it almost impossible to finance solar projects.
At every decision point, the Commission took action to reduce compensation and reduce certainty for small renewables developers.
In Helena, Jonathan Ambarian, MTN News.
Justices will now take the case into consideration. They gave no indication on when they could reach a decision. There's more news from across our state on the MTN 9 o'clock news. The deadline for farmers and fishermen to make their final quarterly tax payment for 2019 is quickly approaching. We'll have the details on that. Join me for that and all the news from around the state. That's at 9 on the CW. But first, still to come on tonight's 5:30 news, the Montana Hope Project making dreams come reality for a 5-year-old Lockwood girl. We'll tell you where she's off to. And in sports, Scott shows us how this wild high school sequence 2 years ago helped Dawson Community College to its best men's season this year.
You're watching MTN News with Janelle Slade and Russ Riesinger. Storm Tracker weather with Bob McGuire. And sports with Scott Breen. This is the 5:30 news on Q2, Montana's news leader.